and it was just great.
Waterbury also sent group after group of draftees to the war. 12,000 of them. The mayor saw them all off at the railroad station. Each man received a prayer book and a carton of cigarettes, courtesy of the Shriners. Meanwhile, young Waterbury women did their best to keep in touch with the men overseas.
We wrote letters to all of the boys we knew, and they loved getting the letters because they said at roll call they wanted their name to be called over and over because they said it was so wonderful. They loved these letters because we told them where we went last night. We went for a hot dog or something. You know, I mean, it wasn't anything bigger. We went to the USO dance and we saw so-and-so there. And at Christmas time, they got boxes galore. My whole kitchen table, my mother used to help. Everybody helped. And we sent boxes to all of them.
On December 31st, 1943, some of Anne DeVico's friends asked her to go with them into Manhattan. They wanted to see in the new year in Times Square.
Well, we had to argue with my mother because my mother said, only bad girls go to New York. And finally, we all cried and everything. My mother finally said, okay, you can go because there's 8 of you going. How could 8 of you do something wrong? So we were at the Times Square Hotel, and we said, let's find an automat. And all of a sudden, this big, tall, good-looking dreamboat comes by. And he said, hey, we're looking for the automat. Why don't you look with us? And I said, fine. So that was my future husband, Bob. And as he's walking with me, and he said, here, the ball is going to come down. And he turned and kissed me, and he said, I'm going to marry you. And I said, all right. I had to say he was my boyfriend's friend because if my mother ever thought I picked up somebody in New York City, you know, she wouldn't have allowed me to even go outside the house again. When I came home, I'm thinking, how could it be that I'm from a small city in Waterbury, Connecticut, and how could I meet somebody from Valparaiso, Indiana, in New York City, and how could we fall in love? And really, he said he fell in love with me that very first day. It was as if fate had just said, you're going to meet somebody, and whoever thought it would be like that.
January 1st, 1944. Dearest Vic and the babies, I am feeling fine, and I hope to hear the same from you always. I didn't write sooner because I was very busy, and there was no mail service where I was. I had a big turkey dinner for New Year's, and it was very good. Don't worry about me. Love, Babe.
General Eisenhower, named to command the gathering Allied invasion forces, surveys the Italian front with General Clark, 5th Army Commander. In the mountains of central Italy, he observes artillery fire blasting the way toward Cassino.
As 1944 began, the Allies continued to slowly battle their way northward in Italy, pushing the Germans out of one defensive position after another. With them now was Ward Chamberlain from Norwalk, Connecticut.
My father was in World War I. He was at Belleau Wood, and he was wounded twice, got the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest medal you can get. After he died, I was walking by St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I saw Father Duffy there, the famous chaplain from World War I. But I met him with my dad a couple of times. So I went up to him on the steps of the cathedral. I said, Father Duffy, my name is Ward Chamberlain. He said, that's a wonderful name. He said, your father is one of the bravest men I ever knew. That'll break your heart. Yeah.
Chamberlain had been captain of the Princeton soccer team when the war broke out, and he was eager to do his part. But there was a problem.
I couldn't serve in the Army or the Air Force because I'd lost my eye, my right eye, with meningitis when I was about 10. And so I was 4F as far as the military services were concerned. Then I heard about this organization called the American Field Service, which at that point were with the British in the North African desert.
The American Field Service was a relief organization that had been formed during the First World War. And now Chamberlain signed on as a volunteer ambulance driver. He had originally shipped out for North Africa, only to find himself hospitalized there for 6 weeks with a mild case of polio.
And after I did that for 6 weeks, I was in pretty good shape, and I got some orders to report back to my Cairo headquarters, and I read them, and they said you're supposed to have desk duty for a year, so I just tore those up and never gave them to anybody. And 10 days later, I was in Italy. Exactly where I wanted to be. Exactly. Wasn't so sure once I got there.
In early January 1944, Chamberlain had his first taste of war.
We were in a forward position, probably, a half a mile from the actual front line, if you could call it that. And the first guy that they brought in who was so badly shot up, we got him into the ambulance on a stretcher. And I don't think I've ever said this to anybody. I went around the side of the ambulance and just let everything out. I just sick as I could be for about 30 seconds. And I had never seen a body cut up as badly as that guy was.
The Allies now came up against new and still more formidable German defenses. The Gustav Line. It combined 3 rivers, the Sangro, the Garigliano, and the Rapido, and a chain of mountains honeycombed with mines, pillboxes, and sheltered gun emplacements. Its keystone was a 1,715-foot Monte Cassino. Looming above the village that gave the hill its name stood the most important monastery in Europe, a Benedictine abbey whose origins went back to the 6th century. Behind it lay the broad Liri Valley and the road to Rome. Time and again, Allied forces tried to fight their way around its edges and were stopped cold. Prime Minister Winston Churchill proposed a daring solution to the impasse. A surprise landing behind the German lines at Anzio, 35 miles south of Rome. It was a risky idea that would take time to plan and execute. Meanwhile, the Allies, including American, British, Canadian, New Zealand, French, North African, Indian, and Free Polish troops, would mount a series of all-out assaults on Cassino, aimed at somehow breaking through.
It was a horrible battle because we kept throwing divisions, new tactics. We couldn't get through there, and we'd lost an awful lot of casualties. The guys that I admired most were the guys that were really scared to death and did what they had to do. Some of us were too stupid to feel so scared, or you just had some protective armor psychologically that you put on. The guys I admired were the guys who really were frightened and went on and did what they had to do, whether they were soldiers or ambulance drivers or whatever.
In the early morning hours of January 21st, Chamberlain watched as the 36th Texas Division tried to cross the fast-moving Rapido in the center of the line. We might succeed, its commander had written in his diary, but I do not see how we can. He was right. There was no cover. The men stumbled into minefields, drawing torrents of machine gun and mortar fire. Every man who managed to make it across the Rapido was killed, wounded, or captured. Some who tried to swim back to safety drowned.
How anybody could have sent people through that, I just can't imagine. They were shot to pieces. I saw them come out of the line. They were walking, when I first came up, they were coming out of the line, walking down the side of the road, just eyes shut, just plodding ahead, one foot after the other. They looked like they'd been through the worst stuff, and they had been. They had been. Germans just sat across the river and sprayed them off.